have this innate drive to really fuck with the status quo. The more fuck something was, kind of the better. It takes you out of a place of being safe and predictable, and I think skateboarding as a culture is built on the inverse of those two things.
When we started, it was Vans, Etnies, Airwalk, Duffs. I mean, the market was that small. And then there was DC.
Damon was really great at what he was doing. Ken was amazing at what he was doing and bringing to the table. He was really kind of like ahead of his time within our industry.
It fucking knocked Vans on its heels. Created a paradigm shift. It really did.
My personal view is that society is just like high school, Everything from like the alternative group to the punk rock group to the hip hop group, everything is in groups like that, and there's not too many people that are just their own person.
How do you drop out of college and jump into a garage and start making stuff?
Damon and I met in an algebra class in a junior college.
He was doing this brand called 8 Ball, and so I drew him this 8 Ball logo. He made up some shirts, and they were pretty good. Pretty quickly, people were like into the brand, they were into the graphics. And we'd hire graffiti kids to do stuff for us, so it was like this kind of graffiti, early street skate crossover.
There was graffiti art in skateboarding, there was graffiti art in hip hop. And so that sort of thing mixed its way into even us hiring a guy like Persuade.
I did a drawing on a napkin, and I thought it was a pretty cool drawing, so I brought it to Ken. He put it in the computer and colored it all up, and they put it on the t-shirt, and it did gangbusters. It killed it. Simultaneously, I was working on joining the Navy, and Ken Block called me and says, "Persuade, we want more art." I called the recruiter, and I turned him down, and as he was yelling at me, I hung up the phone. The door to the skateboard industry had swung wide open for me. This is the B-boy, the famous B-boy that did gangbusters that opened up the door for the growth of drawers. Ken was always a brilliant graphic designer and really understood marketing at an early age. I mean, we were young. And we were always look forward to the next drawers advertisement because he didn't know what it was going to be. It was that exciting. It was that new and fresh.
We started talking about footwear, and we were looking at the market and the complacency and the lack of innovation. The name DC is a truncated version of Jor's clothing.
Before we had DC, skate shoes, I think, were just looked at as a non-performance product.
For the longest time, it was great because Nike and Adidas, they didn't really play in our space. So it was really easy to look at what they were doing and sort of make a version, riff on it for our space. We think there's an opportunity to innovate on footwear, and we think we can do this. It wasn't gated by anything. It wasn't gated by any of our competitors. It wasn't gated by the market. Retailers are pretty open to whatever we were doing, so yeah, we experimented a lot.
Everything you look at, from like the type of ads we used, photographers, to even the skateboarders we worked with, it all had a certain feel and had to be at a certain level or we just wouldn't do it.
We were just skateboarders being ourselves. It just happened to be that we started a brand within that space that reflected what we were into culturally.
The 90s art and just skating in general influenced what DC did because they were fully immersed in it.
We were a little bit more in touch with the marketplace and what those guys and we wanted.
So in the mid-90s, I hit a point where I was doing all the product design myself on the apparel side, and I needed help.
Kareem Campbell is my second cousin, and he hit me up and he's like, I was just talking to Ken and Damon, and they're looking for a designer for Dub and Drawers.
He had been working on the sort of first generation of streetwear brands in New York, like Mecca and Fat Farm. I reached out to him, we connected, and he was interested to move to the West Coast and work with us.
It was so light years ahead of anything that anybody in New York was doing. There was room to be part of something that was very apparent that was going to create a paradigm shift. So it's like, yeah, I'm out. Suck it, New York.
So we started building the team.
Gio Estevez over at Supreme introduced me to Ken and Damon. I think this was like in '96. A couple of months later, he's like, "Yo, they're looking for a shoe designer." And I was like, "Word? I want to be a shoe designer." He's like, "That's why I'm calling you."
It was interesting because Sung hadn't designed shoes before, but he had this incredible sense for style. We hired him for his aesthetic, for his perspective, for his view on culture.
The first shoe that I designed was the Lynx. A lot of the shoes that was being produced in skate market at that time, I felt like it was just too puffy.
Sung's instincts were so finely tuned that the first shoe he ever designed for DC is the most iconic shoe that DC's ever had.
I did Kalis's first shoes, I did Stevie's first shoes. I think those first two shoes kind of broke all types of expectations. Stevie's shoe, obviously, he's like, I need something different. Something that speaks of my background, who I am. Yeah, he wanted some fly basketball looking shit.
When you skate, you look at everything differently. Like, we're gonna see a set of stairs, and we're not gonna look at the stairs the same way. When you translate that to the design side, you might hold up a basketball shoe or a running shoe. Well, I like some of these lines, but I'm gonna reinterpret it and I'm gonna just adapt it to what I want it to do, what I wanna use it for.
Streetwear, as you call it now. It was hard to classify it, actually, at that point. It was just like kind of representing multicultural existence of people of color in New York City and their experience. And we sort of wanted to bring that to light.
For a kid, 15 or 16 or 17, and you live in LG projects or Gowanus projects, if you wore like skate gear, you'd put yourself under the microscope. For a lot of kids, it was just like, I just want to wear what's happening on the street because it's tough enough just being a skateboarder. I was just building product for my peers.
In the group, we had an amazing collective of guys that were just so plugged in. They came pretty hard from the early genesis of that movement or that scene and brought all that flavor, like all that style and aesthetic into what we were doing. It's really interesting to get that East Coast, West Coast convergence in a single brand at that point in time.
DC at that time really knew how to take care of their people and recognized that we were pioneers as artists and designers and gave us the freedom to do so.
You hire creative people to bring something to the table, and if you micromanage them, you might as well fire them and get an admin.
People didn't dictate what we brought to the table, we did.
Those guys have a great knack for knowing what's good and knowing who good people are and allowing them to do good work. I would shoot like portraits of Stevie all the time for fun, because I wanted to test out a new lens on my Hasselblad or whatever, and I remember throwing a print on his desk and he looked at it and he was like, huh? He's like, that's Stevie's new ad. And I was like, really?
You didn't have some production manager coming and freaking out on you about how much money you spent trying to figure out something cool.
Ken and Damon were like, fuck that, we're gonna invest in this stuff. And it was all a risk, big risks. Spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on developing and commercializing molds for these shoes.
We weren't interested in the making money part. We were interested in creativity. We were interested in innovation. We were interested in pushing things to the point of discomfort. And we really drove on that. And whatever success we had was always the byproduct of that.
From the beginning, what Kane and Damon had done is gotten rid of all the horse shit. It was just a really productive and healthy creative environment. And we just banged shit out.
It didn't matter if you did graffiti or you did skateboards or you did zines or you made movies. There's this collective desire to create in ways that are somewhat connected to the street and unbound. It wasn't transactional, it was relationship-based that led to collaboration.
I mean, DC Shoes was the first company to do a collaboration on a shoe with Supreme. Like, period, end of story. Not many people know that. These guys did all this shit first, way before Nike, way before Supreme, way before this, way before that. DC Shoes was the blueprint.